I never got it, why'd you have to go? I guess this world's too slow for you. I think there's beauty in the gray, the cold, but you just want the gold. And there's no way I can beat it, cause I got no chance, no chance when it comes to her. She got the glitter and the fame, and I just wasn't enough.
Good morning, Mike and Arlen, our Philippine journey. This is a very unique and different video. Something that we don't usually delve deeply into, but we will this time. Can foreigners own physical property, land, in the Philippines? You watch 100 different videos and they'll tell you no. Stick around. We're going to tell you 2 different ways that you can, other than those that are normal that everybody does know about. All right. And then we're going to tell you some super exciting news at the end. So let's get started. Number 1, I put this video out because people always tell you you cannot own land as a foreigner, other than through the generally accepted methods. And that is if you are married, you have a spouse, and you and your spouse buy that land together, of which your ownership rights are very limited. Okay. Number 2 is through inheritance if your spouse passes away. We're not going to get into the nuances of the first 2 because everybody should know, if they've really researched it and looked into it, how that works. And just the way it is. But here's what we are going to get into. There are 2 ways that a foreigner can own land, and we're going to tell you not just those 2 ways. We're going to tell you where our information comes from, why we got that information. So very briefly, prior to my retirement, all right, as many of you may or may not know, I was in the medical field and then got into business. And our businesses were large businesses. They were very, very large healthcare companies and practices. And those companies and practices were in the 7 and 8 digit income streams. Along with that comes all of the unfortunate dealings with attorneys. So we've dealt with a lot of attorneys, high-end attorneys. And eventually we figured out that we needed the expertise because we may have a healthcare concern question to these attorneys, but it folded into business. So we kept on retainer and used and spent a lot of money with one of the largest, most prestigious healthcare legal firms. Actually, they're a legal firm with a healthcare arm, all right, in the nation, based out of Chicago. Prior to my retirement, I asked them a question, could they refer me to an attorney in the Philippines concerning estates and concerning property. Well, I had forgotten that they are actually a international representation firm. In other words, they have other firms that they have vetted and they have worked with, both for foreign people getting legal advice in the U.S. and for U.S. people getting legal advice in about 23 different countries, one of which was the Philippines. And they have representation in Manila, and that's who I use. And in turn, I asked for and you should always ask for. Any information that you get from an attorney, you have to make sure you ask them, you want it as an opinion, and will they represent you in court based on that opinion? Now, we asked, particularly I did prior to retirement, hey, how can I own land in the Philippines? Well, they went through all of the usual stuff, just like we've told you about before, just like everybody else, inheritance or the limited ownership that you can have, or limited rights of ownership you can have, especially if you have a prenup and everything else in a marriage to a foreign spouse. But I can't walk right in off the street under either one of those conditions and buy land. But there is a way. And these people that put out all these videos that tell you there is no way are completely wrong. Okay? And then, you know what? They're not wrong. These are not methods that will work for everybody. Okay? And the reason behind it is, what's it going to cost, and the benefit of how much am I going to spend to be able to own that land. Okay? So let's go into it. First off, corporations. Well, as you're well aware, or should be well aware, in the Philippines, you have domestic corporations. Now, keep in mind, the Philippines does not have limited liability partnerships, and the Philippines does not have limited liability corporations. They don't recognize those, and they don't organize those. All right? But you can buy or form a personal corporation or a domestic corporation, and you can structure that in half a dozen different ways. All right? But 60% of that has to be owned by Filipinos. Okay, well, so how does this work then if it's owned by Filipinos and they own the majority? This is what has been happening for years in the Philippines. You don't see it, and this is why YouTubers really don't mention it. And it's because it doesn't apply to their inherent lifestyle. You don't get a lot of expats coming to the Philippines with the financial wherewithal and desire to spend money to make money. Most of them are in a different mindset. When you form a corporation, and this is all according to the legal opinion that we got, this is all completely legal, and there's case law supporting it. And when I say case law, I mean law that has been questioned in court and passed. So when you form this corporation, and this is the way that big corporations, small corporations, private equity funds, joint venture capital funds, this is the way they do it in all over the world that follows this legal doctrine. All right. But in the U.S., and I'm very familiar with it because we've done it. This is how we set up ours, or some of ours. When you form that corporation, you have partners. And 60%, we're going through a hypothetical here. 60% of these partners are Filipinos, all right, because that's what it's going to take. And you represent that 40%. So your partners could outvote you on everything. You need to keep in mind, in a corporation, your partners cannot vote you out. Okay? They can't vote to sell your shares. That's not legal. Okay? They can't force you to sell your shares. Number two, when you form that corporation, you have a managing director. Okay? And then you have a set of bylaws. And in those bylaws, the first thing you do is you set up a rule that simply states that any concerns, any decisions that have to do with the disposition of property or assets, all right, you don't necessarily have to call it, you just call it assets, all right, has to receive a supermajority vote by the managing director. That would be the first mistake. You don't do that. Okay? What you do is you specifically set up a rule that says the managing director may not be removed without a supermajority vote. Now you can't be removed. You can't be taken out. The second thing you do is that you put up a second rule in that corporation that specifically states that all of the assets of the corporation must be maintained and their disposition may only be changed by the managing director. So now your corporation goes out, it buys land, you're a 40% owner of that theoretically. However, the beauty of it is that you then get into the aspects of paid in capital, all right, which is different than actual ownership, okay? And so the benefits of this make it much easier for you to liquidate it if you want to, and you're getting your money back. Now, I've skipped a lot of stuff in here. Time is an issue, okay? But the point is simple. This rule's been around a long time. There are plenty of businesses that are already set up this way and have been set up for years, okay? Where a foreigner is in the position of controlling the entity and in control of the land. Now, the corporation can be anything, okay? You can set it up as an Airbnb and never rent a thing. There's no law in the Philippines that says a corporation has to make money. That's just the way it is. Now, this has been around for a long time. Why people tell you you cannot own is because you have to spend the money to set up the corporation. You need to put everybody into some kind of board, onto a board, and pay them, 1,000 pesos a year for an annual board meeting or something like that. You have to make it clean and reasonably legit. All right. You have to file taxes, but you can own land 100% in your control. And if it's your decision to sell it, you can do that too. Now, let's talk about the next piece. The next piece came about in February of 2022, and that's the Foreign Investment Act. In the Foreign Investment Act, under specific guidelines, foreign investors can own 100% of a entity owned by and run by a foreign corporation. Now, they've done this because they have to compete with all the other nations. Under the Foreign Investment Act, it requires you to set up and have a capital of X amount of dollars. So the minimum right now is about, I think it's $200,000 paid in capital. In addition to that, there are specific areas that the corporation may not participate in. There are 6 or 7 areas that you may not set this business up as. All right. These are areas like public utilities, public transportation, jeepneys, okay, telecommunications, electricity, water. These are critical infrastructure that the Philippines will not allow other people to control. Through the Foreign Investment Act, you can set up a business, and that business can own land, and you can own 100% of it with no Filipinos. I think you have to have 15 employees. Okay. But this whole thing about not being able to own land in the Philippines is just not totally correct. And it's not totally correct because for most people, they just don't have the financial wherewithal. And the point behind this is not to address those of you that might have that financial wherewithal. The point that I'm making with this is simple. You need to do your research. Just like this debacle you've had with all of these YouTubers claiming that the immigration laws are going to do this and this and this. And in the end, they didn't do squat hardly of negative impact at this point in time. All right. The laws that they changed and passed were actually a benefit. Okay. One guy says one thing and then 1,000 other people repeat it and disseminate that in a negative fashion. Do your research, learn it, understand it. If you're interested in real estate and you're interested in buying property, go get a good Philippine lawyer. We are not lawyers, okay? We've spent enough over the years. I think I probably spent enough to get through law school if I wanted. All right. But I rely on the expertise of those people that are trained. Okay. Now the exciting news. It is now, the sun is starting to peak up. I'm really excited today because in a couple of hours, Arlen and I are going to get in the car and we are heading to the Manila airport to pick up my daughter. She arrived in Tokyo last night. She had breakfast. She had dinner at a 7-Eleven, which for her was really exciting because if you've ever seen videos on Japanese 7-Elevens, they're quite different than what she's used to in the U.S. And she was excited to give that a try of what's available to eat at a 7-Eleven. And she said it was pretty good. And then she spent the night at Narita Airport in one of their pod hotels, of which it was really surprisingly nice. So our videos will be a little bit less often over the next 3 weeks as we'll be traveling Bohol. And hey, just a super exciting day. But keep in mind 2 things. Do your own research. Do not listen to people who just simply regurgitate crap that they hear. All right? Just do your own research. It's nice to get information. It's better to verify that information. Number 2, hey, please consider subscribing. Hit that thumbs up. And hit that notify bell because the next videos you may see will be on vacation somewhere else. Thanks so much. Have a great day.